All right, college football fans, this is the weekend. This is like Christmas for an entire weekend because we've got rivalry week, and this is the best weekend of games every year, regardless of the records, because when you've got those great Oregon State matchups, Arizona State, USC-UCLA, and all the way through Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama-Auburn, this is as good as it gets. When you love college football, you love the history and the prestige and the tradition. You love these matchups. And then when they actually mean something, when there are conference championships on the line and BCS national championship implications, it's sick. It's a must-watch weekend. We had some games on Thursday, but it really ramps up on Friday, and then it's wall-to-wall on Saturday. New Year's Day special. Championship weekend's really special now with the Big Ten added to the SEC and the Pac-12 and the ACC, but this is the weekend. All right, let's run down the games, and keep in mind our confidence picks this season are 22-14 against the spread. 22-14, that's, let's see, we're 68-35 against the spread in 3 seasons, so that's pretty good. Only one confidence pick. I tried to do better than that. I scoured the schedule back and forth. I looked at the point spreads, and I could only come up with one. And that's why it's called a confidence pick. Otherwise, I would love to have like 10 of them. But I just have the one confidence pick, so lock in on that one. All right, let's start with Friday's action. Arkansas and LSU. This has been a rivalry in the SEC that's been hotly contested in previous years when the Hogs were good. Now they're really bad. They're just looking for one win in the SEC, and this is not the team to do it against. The LSU Tigers are rolling. They looked very impressive at home against the Aggies last week, 34-10. Yeah, I don't like the 25-point spread here because LSU can sometimes deflate the football and just kind of grind home to a win. But I got to take the Tigers here, minus the 25 against Arkansas. The Hogs cannot pass the football. Yeah, they can run it, but LSU can stop the run, and they're going to be very one-dimensional in this game. Oregon State. Well, the Beavers had a great season going. At one point, it's 6-1, 6 consecutive wins, but they have fallen apart. They played tough against Stanford, losing that first game 20-12, but since then, they lost by 42 points to Washington, and the Huskies aren't really that good. They lost that game at home by 42 points. All right, they're taking on Oregon. Oregon's had a strong season by most standards, but of course, they're disappointed in losing the conference last week in falling to the Wildcats 42-16. That was the shocker of the weekend by far. Oregon wins this football game. Oregon State plus the 23 points here, even though certainly we know the Ducks could just lay on the throttle, score like 5 touchdowns in a row, and turn a close game into a complete blowout. But I'll take the 23 in Oregon State. Also on Friday, we've got Fresno State trying to complete an undefeated season and taking on San Jose State. Fresno is just a 7.5-point favorite. We believe that they will cover the points on the road. Central Florida trying to finish off the Conference USA Championship, or the America Athletic Conference Championship. It used to be in Conference USA. America Athletic Conference Championship against South Florida. I guess they're trying to team those two teams, pit those two programs together as rivals the last weekend of the season. Central Florida beats South Florida and completes the undefeated conference streak. Only lost to South Carolina by 3 points, Central Florida. Okay, South Florida covers the 27 points, though, so take USF plus the 27, but Central Florida wins this one in a rout. Okay, we get to Saturday in a huge game, but also most likely a huge mismatch. Florida State is hosting Florida. Actually, they're going on the road to Gainesville to take on Florida. The Gators lost just one game last year in the regular season and won this matchup. If you would line up the 5- and 4-star recruits on these two rosters, it would be pretty similar. But we know that the Gators are in complete chaos. They lost a ton of players to injury early in the season. Their quarterback, their running back, and Dominic Easley along the defensive line, 8 starters in all. They're just ravaged by injuries, and the train is off the tracks. They lost to Georgia Southern. They got 2 guys blocking each other. If you saw that video on YouTube, Florida State wins this one, and they win it going away, cover the 27.5, even though the talent is somewhat similar. Stanford and Notre Dame. Stanford should not be playing Notre Dame the last game of the season. They should be playing Cal, but I'll not go into that. Notre Dame's getting 15 points, and we'll take it. Cardinal wins it. They win it by 10 to 12 points. Notre Dame gives them a game, though. So Stanford over Notre Dame. Take the Irish, though, plus the 15 points. Okay, Baylor and TCU. How will the Bears respond? Because most likely they're not even going to win a conference championship because they'll lose the tiebreaker if they tie Oklahoma State, as long as the Cowboys can win out and win that game against the Sooners next week. So you've got Baylor minus 12 against TCU. I believe that the Bears respond. TCU can't score. They're going to have difficulty doing that. So I think Baylor wins and covers the 12 points, and I'm close to making this a confidence pick, but I will withhold from that. We'll take Baylor minus the 12 against TCU. If they were in Waco, we would pull the trigger, but we won't. Baylor minus 12. Michigan State, Minnesota. This one, a tough one to call. The weather has not been good in the Midwest. We're looking at like mid-30s in East Lansing. So Michigan State's at home. They've wrapped up the Big Ten championship berth. Minnesota's had a nice season at 8-3, but will probably finish off 8-4 with a couple consecutive losses once they hit the tough part of the schedule. Take the Gophers plus the 15.5. We think this is going to be a typical Michigan State slug it out win. They will march on to a win of something like 23-10 in this one. So take Minnesota plus the 15.5 against the Spartans. Wisconsin and Penn State as we stay in the Big Ten. And Wisconsin's just on a roll. They are a very undervalued team. They have just the 2 losses. They lost in Columbus by a touchdown, played the Buckeyes very tough. They went on the road, as we know, and the refs screwed them on the attempted field goal at the gun against Arizona State. Had a chance to defeat who could be the Pac-12 champion. So Wisconsin, like 19th in the country when they're actually a top 8 or 9 team, they take on Penn State. Okay, so Wisconsin wins it at Madison, but we like Penn State to keep it relatively close. Wisconsin wins it by 20. Penn State's getting 24.5 points, so take the Nittany Lions against the spread. North Carolina and Duke. Duke with ACC championship game implications in this one, taking on North Carolina. And very quietly, the Tar Heels playing much better football as of late will win this one over Duke, but we like the Dukies to keep it close. They're getting 6.5 points against North Carolina. Again, a rivalry game. Take the Blue Devils plus 6.5 points. Arizona State. Does Arizona State have anything to play for? Well, tangibly, no. They've won the South Division, regardless of what happens against the Wildcats. Arizona's coming off the big win over Oregon. So we like Arizona State to win this game, but we think it's going to be a tough one. And we're thinking about a confidence pick here, but we'll take Arizona plus the 12 points and just stay with our one confidence pick. Arizona State wins it. Arizona plus the 12. All right, South Carolina and Clemson. We posted a video preview on this one, gave you our prediction, which was South Carolina winning over Clemson for a 5th consecutive season. Gamecocks 30-27. We got a 5.5 point cushion with Clemson right here, so we'll take it with the Tigers, but I'm very confident that the Gamecocks and their front 7 on defense will make life very difficult for one Taj Boyd in this game. South Carolina will stop the Clemson run and make them one-dimensional. So South Carolina wins. Clemson does keep it close, plus the 5.5. Huge, enormous game in the SEC East with Missouri and Texas A&M. Okay, Mizzou wins and they go to the SEC championship game. They lose and they open the door for South Carolina, who goes regardless of what happens against Clemson, obviously. Wow, Mizzou took out Ole Miss on the road last week, 24-10. They've stepped up to every challenge. Even the South Carolina game that they blew, they dominated that game up until the last 5 to 6 minutes of that football game, leading 17-0. Mizzou wins over Texas A&M because even though Johnny Manziel makes me think twice about this pick, wow, Evans and Manziel are just enormous playmakers. Malcolm Kennedy, an exceptional player at wideout for Texas A&M, but the defense is so atrocious. Missouri should be able to match them up one-on-one with those very tall, athletic wide receivers who win one-on-one battles against A&M, and like Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry could have done if LSU wasn't so successful running against A&M. They could have thrown it on them all day. That's what Mizzou's going to do, and they've got the defensive front 4 to put the heat on Johnny Manziel and play it smart, fill up the gaps against the run, and rush the quarterback and take a page out of what LSU did last week against Johnny Football. So we like Mizzou, although A&M keeps it close, plus the 5 points. Okay, let's get down to the real nitty-gritty here with USC-UCLA. That game is a huge, enormous rivalry in college football. Unfortunately, because of the Arizona State win last week, doesn't mean anything in the standings. This one for pride, USC-UCLA. This one's going to be tough and very tight. The one factor in this game we like to side with the Trojans on, UCLA banged up across the front line, sacked 9 times last week against Arizona State. The USC front, probably not quite the front 7 of Arizona State, but pretty close. USC basically had the one phantom game against Arizona State, giving up 62 points. Otherwise, the Trojans have been mighty tough on D, and they're going to be very tough for Brett Hundley to score points on. USC wins, UCLA covers 3.5 points. Tough game there. Ohio State and Michigan. Check out our video post and prediction on this game. We like the Buckeyes winning. We said the score would be 37-23. Well, at that point, the line was at 13.5. So we would have the Buckeyes covering the spread. Since then, it's jumped to 16.5. So we reluctantly take the Wolverines to cover the 16.5 points, although Ohio State could just annihilate them. This game could be 45-14, but we trust the rivalry. We trust, again, similar to Florida State, that if you match up the 5- and 4-star recruits in these teams and matched them up that way, you wouldn't be able to tell these rosters that much apart. Ohio State would have the edge. Michigan's at home, where they've only lost, let's say, 1 game in the last couple years under Brady Hoke. So Wolverines keep it somewhat close within a couple scores, so the Buckeyes win it fairly easily. Again, we'll go with 37-23, so the Wolverines cover 16.5. And now we get to the Iron Bowl. Auburn, the story, Gus Malzahn, resurrecting this program in 1 year has been astounding. They have 1 loss in the SEC. I just got a question on YouTube about the Auburn resume against Florida State and Ohio State. Well, it's exceptional. They've lost to LSU, and that's not necessarily an embarrassing loss. And if they run the table, get through Bama and Missouri or South Carolina, wow, the Auburn resume is very impressive. But first things first, and that first thing first is number 1, Alabama. They're playing in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Obviously, being on the Plains, that severely helps Auburn in pulling off this upset. It's a 10.5 point spread. 2 matchup nightmares for Auburn. They run the football. They don't throw it. They want to throw the football most of the time 10 times, but they're going to have to throw it against the Alabama Crimson Tide, probably in the 20 to 25 range if they're lucky and aren't down by 20 points in the first half. Okay, Auburn wants to run, and Alabama shuts down the run. Who do I trust in that matchup? Well, it's not even close. I trust Alabama. Okay, point number 2 is that Alabama runs it down everybody's throats. After that Virginia Tech opener, they've had success running against everybody. Auburn can't stop the run. LSU ran on them, Tennessee, even Arkansas ran it down their throats. Alabama is going to control the football, dominate the game, hit some play-action passes downfield, and Auburn's not going to be able to score. 42-17 tied. Confidence pick because Alabama's just a 10.5 point favorite in this game. Take the Tide, lay the 10.5 against the Auburn Tigers. There's our Week 14 selections, rivalry week. We would love to hear from you now. We want your picks. Let us know where we completely missed it right here on Mark Rogers TV.